As spirits and principles, we give ourselves the intellectual tools we need to understand the action of such figures within the genre of ancient myth. For then we can see that a spirit does not act as a simple human individual, but through a series of several ordinary human mortal individuals. Societies that recognize this phenomenon of one spirit capable of entering and influencing different individual persons sometimes describe the process as possession. The concept of possession assumes that a spirit descends on a person and rides or drives them, making them do actions not of their own will, but as dictated by the power of that spirit. A less hostile, more voluntary view of interactions between spirits and individual humans sees the human as invoking and taking in the spirit in an act of voluntary inspiration. Inspiration differs from possession in that it is desired, not suffered. It is voluntary, not forced. It's a healthy act of informed will, not a pathological happening. Possession happens to unprepared victims. Inspiration comes only to carefully prepared minds, belonging to individuals and groups who choose deliberately to invoke a given spirit. They invoke the spirit because they know that if they act according to its prescriptions, they or their society will gain a number of desirable advantages. To put the matter less kindly, possession happens to the ignorant. Inspiration is a result of deliberate, systematic preparation, education, and initiation. Let us return to the issue of the most reasonable name to give spirits and principles, the central figures in ancient mythology. In the Nile Valley, some 12,000 years ago, when Africa was producing the first complex cooperative societies, the name given to the mythic figure, the spirit or the active principle in social life, was nature. In the philosophy of the time, practically every area of natural, social, and human activity was considered to be the field of influence of a particular nature or spirit or active principle or a combination of natures. For example, the numinous process of childbirth was said to be subject to the influence of a female nature called Renenet, a variant of the creative spirit Ast. There was a spirit of calculation, mathematics, writing and archiving, astronomy and time, architecture, medicine, and the social organizational virtues of justice, truth, and balance. Needless to add, there were also spirits dedicated to violence and coercive power. A study of these various mythical forces, spirits, or principles can help us to understand the nature and development of society in the formative period of antiquity. Because the social popularity of a particular spirit was a sure indication that that spirit, that principle, or that way of doing things appealed to large numbers of people as the way they should act if they wished to help their society to advance to higher levels of life, prosperity, and health. In the language of ancient Egypt, ANKH, Uja, Seneb. We can take a useful comparative example from a later mythic tradition than that of pre-dynastic Nile Valley civilization. We take the West African forest and coastal societies of the 18th and 19th centuries. One of the best-known mythic figures from that period was the folk anti-hero Anansi, who entered West Indian folklore as Anansi, spelled with a C-Y, not an S-E at the end. Anansi was the mythic image of a society in chronic breakdown mode, a completely egotistical character, so self-centered that he would try any hustle as long as it made him personally richer and more powerful than everyone around him, even if his actions ended up destroying his own society. Obviously, West African society in the 18th and 19th centuries had plenty of occasions to observe Anansi's type of ego-driven narcissism. The society was in a state of disintegration, with selfish individuals collaborating with destructive invaders to pillage African resources and destroy African humanity. Anansi, meanwhile, was focused solely on what profit he could withdraw from the destructive goings-on. African society has not always been governed by Anansi-type hustlers. In the deepest recesses of our pre-dynastic past, spirits of a different nature were recognized, honored, and invoked for creative inspiration. In the Perang video presentations to follow this one, we shall look at the nature, character, and actions of some of the most significant ancient African netchers, mythic figures whose inspiration most strongly impacted social development. Our examination will help us to discuss what these myths and mythic figures tell us about ancient Africa's most valuable intellectual, social, and cultural assets, how they came to be transformed, degraded, or suppressed in the course of our history. After that, if we have energy left, we can consider how to use the knowledge we retrieved through our study in the design of a socially just, reasonable, and intelligent future society for ourselves.